Just something about the VHS tapes. What is it?
I love the tape. I love the clunkiness of these tapes. I love the magnetic tape inside. I love everything about VHS. I love that you have to get up, you have to put this inside the player, clunk, it gets in there. You have to fast forward, you have to rewind, and you appreciate, when you actually get to watch the film, you appreciate it, and that is a piece of history right there.
There's been this massive resurgence in VHS, and of a certain generation that grew up on VHS tapes and having to rewind tapes or even get a rental tape from like the video shop, the late Blockbuster Entertainment and other places, video vans and whatnot, and even buying them from places like HMV and stuff like that. I think for that generation, it's definitely, it's not just nostalgia, because it's got to be some kind of nostalgia. It might actually bring back the memories of actually watching films where, yeah, you had to rewind a film or get a fine, or if your videotape was in late, sort of thing.
Here at 3B Video, we have somewhere around 3,500 titles, the majority of which are DVD. I have a small collection of Blu-ray and 4K films. I'm slowly getting back into collecting VHS tapes as well. The video store culture has always been important to me, and I like to make sure that my kids grow up knowing what it was like to walk around in a video store, look at cover art, and pick a movie. We even went as far as to create our very own 3B Video Club membership cards, where if you rented 7 movies, you got a movie for free.
VHS is the best format because it captures everything. Everything you can think of is on VHS tape. You know, everything from low budget obscure films to blockbusters to you know, high budget flops to people's home videos to weird ass special interest. I mean, cartoons. I mean, the list is endless. I mean, VHS holds the key to our culture at that time. It showed everything that we were doing, what we were into, reflections of our society, what people were afraid of, what people wanted, what people, you know, who we were pretty much is communicated through what VHS holds. You know, and I think looking back, it's you know, you have satires and, you know, social commentaries inside of films, you know, but also I think as I've grown as a VHS collector, I've found that VHS is the best format because it holds the key to showing a really raw, sincere, and unique look at our culture through a broad yet idiosyncratic lens. You know, and you know, that's talking about people's like birthdays and going to the bowling alley and, you know, baseball games and you know, like filming your kids playing baseball. I mean, all of these things, these seemingly ordinary events, all of a sudden become these historical pieces, and they were all, you know, filmed through a consumer grade camcorder.
Introducing Zenith's new VHS video movie. The video recorder and camera in one you'll call Smart. Zenith Video Movie is so light and portable. It'll take you to new places. It gives you great color, and you can shoot in low light. Smart! With instant review through the viewfinder. And you can play back Video Movie directly through a TV without extra equipment. Video Movie, the smart new VHS camera recorder in one from Zenith. Smart!
A lot of the things that are in this video store were either given to me for free or they were found dirt cheap. This was a dream project, and everybody kind of came together and helped me make this possible. Like these shelves, for example. These shelves came from the video store that I used to rent movies from when I was a kid. And when they were going out of business, they sold these shelves for $5 a piece. I didn't know if I was going to have room for 2 shelves, but I bought 2 shelves anyway. And when we brought them down here, we actually had to tear out a wall to make space for these shelves. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
VHS is the best format because it's timeless. I don't know. I would say, oh, it's full of flavor and warmth and all these like adjectives that really don't mean anything other than just my experiences with it. But yeah, it's timeless. Think about how many movies came out on VHS, how long VHS was in the public eye as far as we can watch movies at home. You know, DVDs came out, but I feel like DVDs still didn't hit as hard as VHS did. And obviously, no one's having, well, I'm sure that people are doing this, but there are way more VHS collectors, and VHS has this culture around it. What is DVD culture? You know, like, I guess The Matrix, essentially. Bonus features. But yeah, VHS, it's just timeless. It's a medium that can't be, you can't fuck with that medium. Like, it's impossible to defeat the VHS.
Why is VHS the best format to me? Well, I grew up when it was coming out, and it was awesome just being able to go to the store and rent something and pick it up and take it home and watch it. And it's memories for me of a better time and just hanging out with your friends and your family and watching movies and just having a good time going to the video store on a Friday and picking up a movie, and whether it be good or bad, and watching it all weekend and talking about it on Monday. I just think that's what makes VHS the best, because that was a great time.
For me, there's just something extremely important about keeping the video store vibe alive, which is why I had to build one in my very own house. I love when my friends or my family come over and they come into this room and they go, wow, you're really doing this. You're really keeping this alive. There's something about it that just makes me extremely happy. When my friends bring their kids over and I give them a box of candy and they look through all the movies and they take something home with them, I know that in a small way, we're kind of keeping the video store alive.
VHS is probably just, to me, it's the best because that's what, you know, film was. Like, there was a point in time where film was just so important. It still is, obviously, but it was so strong and prevalent, and that's where that's when the tapes were out, and it was just like everyone wanted these tapes that were just indestructible, you know, and they were just beautiful. The cover art on them was awesome. The different types of cases they had, from like clamshells to whatever else, you know, it was just always super sick.
I think VHS is the best format, mainly to us, strictly because I think of the time and the place with it. I think a lot of us discovered certain films and our love for film through this medium, hence why, you know, we love it so much. But I do think it physically has a more superior vibe than other things. You know, it's a lot, it could take a bigger beating, you know what I mean? It's sturdier, you know, you know, you take a disc in your hand and it's flimsy, you know what I mean? You look at that silver side and you go, if anything, a teardrop drops on this thing, it's gonna ruin it, you know what I mean? VHS is you could only, if you feel like you could run it over with a truck and survive, and I don't recommend because it won't survive. But you know, you get that vibe in your heart that, in your heart of hearts, that it'll work for you in your favor. But I think that, and I also think that the artwork was big on it. I think there was a lot of really cool, weird, wild, experimental art being done. You know, more, you know, in the underground horror stuff, you know, more is like art. You know what I mean? The artwork you'd find is more so than Hollywood would be more cookie cutter, friendly stuff. You would see really obscure, weird, you know, sexually suggestive, real gory stuff.
VHS, I think, is the best format purely because of the accessibility it had. Literally anyone in those days could probably make, produce, release, and even distribute a film amongst all the independent distributors in the UK. So you'd have such an array of films to watch, and the choice was changing week by week. You never knew what you were going to get, and literally you'd have Hollywood blockbusters alongside small independent films, and the only thing that you'd have to pick between them would be the cover art.
VHS is the best format because there's a lot of reasons. It's heavy. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of film. There's so much, you know. It's a physical chunk and it's heavy. I love the history behind it, and I always go on and on about how when you watch something, it can be a television recording. It can be, you know, something like one of the tapes behind me. Like when you watch something that has a lot of people have watched, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High comes to mind. You know, when Phoebe Cates is taking her top off, you know, every time that movie was rented, you know, like there's like a little bit of static around that scene because that scene was viewed so many times. You know, I'm sure that tape was rented and rewatched that scene over and over and over. You know, horny boys, you know, gathered around the VCR and just watched that together or alone. You know, no judgment. I don't know how you watch your Fast Times Ridgemont High, but I mean, even the horror films too. Like think about, you know, Friday the 13th or Puppet Master or Nightmare on Elm Street. We're gonna rewatch those death scenes. You know, you like the sleeping bag death? Let's watch it. Let's watch it multiple times. Or even the Kung Fu tapes. You know, the with the crazy action scenes, like those scenes get rewatched multiple times. And when you watch a tape that has been handed, you know, been passed around, or like you bought it secondhand, you didn't buy it new, you're not only buying the movie itself, you're buying the history. And so when you go back and watch those tapes, you know, you see those things, man, and like you see what other people watched and the legacy behind the viewing patterns. I don't know. You don't get that with a DVD. You don't get that with a Blu-ray, or you definitely don't get that with digital. But something about that I think is really significant. Like, and it just is lost from moving on from VHS. I think that's really cool.
The other thing that was absolute when you visited a mom and pop video store was the adults only section. A lot of us never got to peek behind that curtain, but it was always there. Except behind this curtain is not an adults only section. Behind this curtain is the rest of my basement.
I think for me, one of my favourite things about VHS was the trailers that you'd get at the start of them. So you'd have all these wacky, crazy trailers. I remember seeing loads of horror films like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all these like Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. And that to me was amazing. seeing these little previews of these trailers was totally amazing.
I think any horror fan is going to tell you that watching a horror movie on VHS is their preferred way to do it. Something about the worn look, sort of the analog aesthetic, and, you know, movies like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween seem to just be a lot creepier with a darker, more murkier print. It really adds a lot, I think, to the overall feel of the movie. People that grew up in the 80s and 90s, I think, are very familiar with the horror movies looking that way. And it's interesting watching those films now, like on the 4K remastered Blu-rays, because they look like totally different films. Sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. I think especially with the cheaper films, you know, like the more low-budget movies, that it was almost more beneficial to release it on a more old-school format. I think that it really adds to the charm of it. Sometimes with the remastered image, it kind of gives away, you know, the cheapness a little bit, and the movie doesn't look nearly as appealing as it did back on VHS.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. After you stop screaming, you'll start talking about it.
When it comes to the first VHS memory for me, probably honestly was going to the video rental store. I remember my dad's friend, he used to work at a mom and pop video rental store. So I used to always go in there, and that was kind of like right before Blockbuster. I think I remember going to that mom and pop video store, and then right around that same time, then I started going to Blockbuster, because as a kid, and I've always been someone who's been into movies, so I remember like always absolutely loving films. So, you know, I always would be going on Fridays, so basically after school. The thing I would always do was go to the video rental store and look through the new release wall, and I'd go through like the horror section and stuff like that. So really early memories for me too was going into the horror section, looking at the movies and being like terrified. I remember there's certain things I would look at and I'd be like, oh, look at the box. And I would feel like too, every time I went in that section, like I was doing something really bad. Like I was like looking at something I shouldn't have. I'm like, oh, I'm looking at something scary. I should not be in this section. There is very scary things in here. And I almost felt like too, like when I was in that section, and this is a really little kid though, I was like convinced like a monster was going to kill me or something, or like a monster was going to come after me and stuff. I don't know what it was, but those were for me really early memories, were going in Blockbuster and going to the horror section, looking at the movies. And of course also though, going on Fridays though and just looking through the new releases and finding new releases. And also early memories too was there were certain movies too that I used to always like to watch anytime I'd have a friend come over. So if I had a friend coming over on Friday, we'd go to Blockbuster and I'd be like, oh, there's certain things that I had to go and rent. Like one of them was always the Willies. The Willies I would always continuously rent that every single time. The other one that I used to always love to rent was Troll 2. And that movie, like I kind of like discovered that movie before it became like the cult phenomenon and was, you know, considered the best worst movie. Like I literally found that movie in the fantasy section in like 1991. Like whenever it was first released, I remember finding it was brand new and I became obsessed with it. So I guess I might be like one of the earliest Troll 2 fans before it became like, you know, the kind of cool to talk about it, or talking about how it was like the best worst movie ever.
Powers of evil are very strong here. I must leave.
Goblins don't exist. Goblins don't exist.
My first VHS memory would have to be as a young lad, Oingo Boingo style. Going to the old VHS store, the local rental store, as everybody on this dock I'm sure did, to get, you know, whatever was out and about that week. Now me, I wasn't the type of kid that would get the hot new thing that was that week. I stayed true to the OGs, and I remember religiously every weekend I would rent either The Wizard of Oz or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And to this day, those movies are very special to my heart. And yeah, that's probably my first real VHS memory. Every weekend like clockwork, going Friday and get them. And it was always those two.
My first VHS memory is probably when my parents rented Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I was about 4 years old, and I remember my parents told my sister at a certain time code on, I guess, an hour and 42 minutes into the film, please put Michael in his bedroom because something very scary happens that will terrify him. And so, randomly near like the last 12 minutes of the film, my sister's like, hey, you got to go in your room. And I'm like, what? And then several years later, I'm now seeing Who Framed Roger Rabbit by myself, completely blanking on this memory until the scene where Christopher Lloyd, his eyes are like poking out, and I just freaked the fuck out. And so yeah, that's like my favorite memory that then later haunted me like at a different point in my life. So yeah.
My first memory of VHS is probably my brother and I going to our local mom and pop video store in the 80s. It was called Harley Video, and we had another one called Pick-a-Flick. We went in, and I think the first movies we really got were Cloak and Dagger and Daryl, because they were pretty big at the time, and man, it's just cool kid movies that are still good today.
So probably my first actual memory of VHS was my dad used to take me to this little movie theater that in the front lobby they rented out VHS tapes, and as early as I can remember, we would go there and my dad would let me pick out a game and a movie, and it would just make my whole weekend. And this is where I started to kind of get that appreciation for cover art and things like that. Because as a little kid, I had no concept of what I was looking at, or I couldn't even read, so it was all about the cover art, like what pulled me in, and then all I had to do was convince my dad, please, Dad, let me rent this. So one of my earliest memories was going to this movie theater / video store and actually renting the Ghostbusters game on NES, Ernest Goes to Jail, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And my dad dubbed both of those movies onto the same tape, which kind of turned me into the person I am today, I guess. That slapstick Ernest comedy with that turn of Freddy becoming this pop culture icon. Kind of put them all together, and maybe also why I like the word bitch so much. Not really sure.
My first memory of watching a tape was I would always go to my grandma's house, and she owned Phantasm 1 and 2 randomly. She wasn't even like a horror fan, she just owned those movies. And my brother and I especially would watch those movies all the time, over and over and over, and slowly just fell in love with that stuff, even though it terrified me as a kid. I was so afraid of horror movies. The tall man from Phantasm scared the shit out of me. But just fantastic memories there. I love those movies because of that.
My first VHS memory. I guess my first VHS memory is just watching those 6-hour cartoon tapes like in front of the television. They had like all the public domain cartoons on it. I just watched those all the time growing up. I mean, it was just a way of life, dude. I don't really, just eating, 12 bowls of cereal and watching those cartoons, and it was just a wonderful time,
Probably my very first VHS memory was watching the movie Day of the Triffids with my parents. It was this exact tape that I still have right here. It was put out by budget release label Good Times Home Video. And as you can see, it's got a Triffid right there on the cover, attacking people. My parents had a collection of horror movies in a little shoebox under their bed that they let me watch at a really young age. It also included Night of the Living Dead, Psychomania, and Alice Sweet Alice. And those would become some of my all-time favorite movies in the genre.
Danny Cinestalker here from YouTube, and just kind of I'm so happy to be part of this documentary because I love VHS. As you can see behind me, I have a whole bunch of VHS, and it's going to show you my collection a little bit, get to some thoughts about my favorite VHS memories and why I like to collect VHS still to this day in 2021, and why it's still relevant, and it's a fun hobby, it's a fun thing, it's a fun, awesome thing to be a part of. And like my very first VHS I remember getting as a kid, like especially like horror movie wise. I remember getting like my grandparents, my mom, we all lived together. I was like 5 or 6 years old. I remember that I think my grandma or grandpa, they bought a VHS copy of Horror Express with Telly Savalas when that creature in the box makes their eyes turn white and they all bleed and stuff like that. I remember watching that one as a kid. I remember the VHS. I have the slip of it somewhere. I do have it somewhere. I don't know where it's at. Somewhere in my pad. I got the VHS slip of it still. And remember that one freaking me out, but I liked it a lot. That's what kind of really drew me into horror movies at a young age. Was the random one is the Horror Express.
It's alive in someone on this train.
You saw his eyes. One look at them and you're dead.
Anything that moves near that door, kill it!
So one of my favorite memories that has to do with VHS and horror movies in general is my dad was somewhat of a movie collector, and he had this little leather-bound book, and every time he got a new movie, he would number the movie and write the title down. It wasn't alphabetical or anything, it was just numbered. But my dad took immense pride in having these movies numbered and in these hard black clamshell cases. Every night I could go back there and I could look at this massive, to me it was a massive shelf of movies. There was probably 200, maybe 300 movies on this shelf, but he had the leather-bound book attached to the shelf with a string, and it had a pin in it, you know, so I could open up this book and I could go through it and go, Night of the Living Dead is number 58 or whatever. And so I could find it on the shelf, and then I could watch the movie and put it back. And that organization system from my father kind of rubbed off on me, and now I keep my movies separated by genre, alphabetical, and the format. So that's one of the first things that comes to mind for me when I think about movies and collecting, is just this really geeky, unique way to categorize them and take care of them. And, you know, something that most people just throw on a shelf and forget about.
One of the biggest memories that I have of watching a VHS tape was on my brother's birthday party. He had his entire Pee Wee football team over, and I was the younger one, and my mom had bought a VHS tape of The Evil Dead. She said she watched it when she was younger, and she wanted us to see it, so we're watching that movie. And back then, it was like, you didn't ask parents if like it was okay for your child to watch these movies. You just threw it on. And that movie terrified me. The Evil Dead was the scariest horror movie ever. I was already afraid of them, and then they threw that on. It was fucked up. And I'll never forget the scene where she's getting, you know, by the trees and whatnot, and my mom had totally forgot about that part, and she's trying to jump in front of the TV, blocking all these kids from seeing this tree rape scene, and all the kids were like tackling her, trying to see like the boobs and stuff, even though there's like a split second of a boob, and not knowing how disgusting that scene really is, because when you're a kid, you're just thinking one thing. And yeah, I'll never forget that. It was one of the funniest yet most terrifying days of my life, was watching The Evil Dead at my brother's birthday party.
No, it was the woods themselves. They're alive, actually.
You know, we all grew up going into mom and pop video stores and just staring at cover art for hours on end. And as an adult, that obsession with horror movies and cinema in general sort of started to consume my life. So the logical thing for me to do was build a video store in my house.
Going on a trip to the video store was something so amazing. It really was. It opened up your world into like a portal, a magic portal. The video store was like a magic portal to another realm, to another world.
Over the years, there's definitely been a lot of great VHS memories that I've formed. Video stores were definitely of my era. The first one I ever went to was a place called Entertainment Plus. And then I went to a place called Audiovisual for a large part of my teenage years. They had 5 movies for 5 days for $5 there. And then while I was in college, a lot of the video stores started going out of business. So of course I bought out a lot of the inventory, a lot of the horror movies that they were selling off on video. And then later in 2017, I actually opened my very own video store called Old School Video. I had the store for about a year. We specialized mostly in horror films and obscure titles and exploitation and stuff like that. And towards the end of the year, one of my regular customers, Mike Reeb, actually bought the store from me. So I was able to use the funds to move here to California to pursue my goal of filmmaking full-time.
Back whenever I was younger, we would have this place called the Movie Gallery, and I think it was like a small chain, but the Movie Gallery in the back was all like the horror tapes and stuff. And I remember I used to walk back there all the time, and I would always see Child's Play 2, where he's cutting the head of the Jack in the Box, and I was always just so terrified of that movie. Also, I would walk by, and I would always see that Jack Frost lenticular cover, and I would walk by and see that it's like an OK Snowman, and then it slowly transitioned into a monster, and it terrified me as a kid. I would get very curious as to what was going on in the movie. Even though I was too afraid to watch them, I was very curious, and I would always grab them and look back on the back of the movie and just see what was going on. It terrified me. So I wouldn't rent them or watch them, but I was always just really, really intrigued by them, and it kind of felt like I was doing something wrong going back to the horror section, but I loved it.
But I was never a Blockbuster kid. That's right, Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were too rich and expensive for me. So we used to go to like mom and pop video stores, which in my opinion were the best ones, because that's where you get a lot of these, films that, something like The Slayer or Blood Diner, The Burning Moon. You'd see a lot of films like that here. I remember I bought this from an old video store that was going out in Ohio, and it was Blood Diner, the big-ass red Vestron VHS tape. But little did they know, little did I know either, this is an Australian VHS, so it wouldn't work in my VCR. Isn't that crazy? So, sorry, Jackie Kong, that was a sucky time when I got Blood Diner for the first time and I couldn't watch it. But it's since become one of my favorite movies of all time. So, yeah, definitely, if you have a chance, check out Blood Diner. That's another classic.
It's funny, it's kind of ironic, like my most outstanding memory from my childhood video store was actually when it was closing down. I have plenty of memories going there and just like being enamored with the tapes and, going there Friday nights, Saturday nights, and, like gathering a bunch of like weird horror movies that I would watch with my dad and one comedy tearjerker to watch with my mom. We'd all watch them together, but, we always got our own little picks. But, the most outstanding memory I have is going to the video store, and it was closing. It was called Video Vision. And I remember my mom calling me and being like, hey, Video Vision is closing. And I was like, oh man, that's a bummer. And she was like, yeah, but they're selling off all their stock. So I got to go to Video Vision and wander around the store as they were closing, and I bought a bunch of tapes from them. So I was actually able to go behind the counter, which was wild. You spend your whole life going to a store and seeing the behind the counter, and it's like this forbidden zone or whatever. But being able to walk behind those stacks and everything, it was really just an incredible experience. I was about 21 years old at the time, and I bought some tapes that I still have in my collection today, and I was able to, bring those home.
So I can vividly remember, going to the video store, obviously, and I remember seeing, the horror section. For some reason, the horror section always stuck out to me as a kid, and one of the tapes that always haunted me, but I never rented, was Monkey Shines. So if you're familiar with this tape, or the box art at the very least, it's a mechanical monkey on the cover. And if you're familiar with the movie itself, you'll know that cover has nothing to do with the film. Now, as a kid, growing up, and seeing that art, and not seeing the film, you're going to paint these images as to what the movie means or what actually happens in the film. And years later, I saw that film, and I can vouch for my imagination was much more scary than the actual film.
It's just a wonderful thing, being able to have those as a memory of the place, and having these tapes that I no doubt rented when I was a kid and that flowed through my community, you know, in Upper Deerfield, New Jersey, it's really special. So I think that's my favorite memory. Ironically enough, is you know, going there when they were closing down and being able to purchase some of those tapes and put them in my collection and preserve them. So it's pretty awesome.
The VHS store was always outstanding for just the vibe. You'd go in there on a Friday night and, you know, it'd be popping, there'd be people everywhere. It was the, like, thing to do, you know what I mean? And you'd scroll through and you'd look at all the new titles and stuff like that, the new arrivals. And you'd go, you know, right to the horror section and such. And I was never really allowed to get horror as a kid, but I always liked to scan it. And for anybody out there, speaking of things you're not supposed to be looking at, anybody out there remember the old porno room? You know, there used to be a section of the rental store that was just this small little cubby hole where the degenerates would go, and it would have like the little hangy things and the hippie fucking beads that would, so you couldn't see inside, and within those dark realms would be the porno, you know what I mean, which is quite comedic to think about. I remember I went to a VHS store once. There was like a big retail store, and they had like a double bay door, but with those same hippie beads, you know what I mean? And you walk through, and like it was the same size of the original store, was the equivalent to the size of the porno section of this place. It was quite funny. But yeah, that was a cool spot. I remember that had, it was like all VHS of obscure, weird, random stuff, and then it was porno and sex sells. So that's probably, you know, made more money off selling the porn there than they probably did the VHS.
Favorite video store memory was, there was this local mom and pop shop video store called Videoland, and my mom loved going there, one, because, you know, I guess bonding experience with your son at a video store, but more importantly, she just was able to talk about so many different films with the owner, who was just very knowledgeable on like old movies, which is what my mom really likes, these black and white films. And I just would have a field day there because they'd have not just awesome videos like to rent, but awesome Super Nintendo video games. Like I was able to rent Mega Man X7 there, and just really good times. And then Hollywood Video moved in across the street, and that totally went out of business in 3 seconds. But yeah, those is good, you know, local video store.
Imagine the perfect video store. It would have a great selection, right? Right. Over 10,000 videos. 3 evening rentals, so no rush, no hassle. Fast checkout. 24-hour quick drop return. Open late every night. Well, the perfect video store.
Welcome to Blockbuster Video.
Is popping up all over the country. There's one near you.
Blockbuster Video. Wow, what a difference.
And as far as one of my most bizarre VHS tape memories, it also involves my father, because my dad, in my brain when I was a kid, was this horror connoisseur. He knew everything about Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, Leatherface. He was just this walking wealth of horror knowledge. And most of the time, when my mom would pull out of the driveway and take off to work, my dad would be like, you know what? Let's sit down and watch Shocker. Let's sit down and watch Evil Dead 2 or House or whatever. But this one particular evening I can remember my mom pulling off and going to work, and my dad had a couple of buddies over. They're all hanging out, they're drinking, they're grilling, whatever they're doing. And it gets evening-ish, and my dad says, I'm gonna need you to go upstairs because we're gonna watch a scary movie. And I, in my little kid brain, I'm like, but you let me watch these movies with you. What's different now? And he's like, trust me, you can't watch this one, you're not old enough yet. So he sends me upstairs. Well, when I was a kid, my mom was really into like home decorating. So then my mom would put mirrors all around our house to make that living room seem bigger than it really was. That's that 80s, 90s home decorating, you know? So I'm sent up the steps so my dad and his friends can watch Return of the Living Dead. Now, I didn't have a bedroom door to my upstairs. The upstairs was sort of like a loft. So you just walk up these steps and you're in the upstairs. So I can hear this movie, and I can hear my dad and his buddies laughing and talking. And it seems like I'm upstairs forever. But in actuality, it's about 19 minutes and 4 seconds. Somewhere around there. I don't know specifics, but I know pretty close, you know? And I can hear them kind of all like, woo, woo! So I get to the top of the steps, so only a sliver of me can see into the living room. And when I can see into the living room, I can see all the mirrors behind the couch, which are showing the TV. And at that very moment, Linnea Quigley, who plays Trash in Return of the Living Dead, is dancing naked on the tombstone. Now, I'm a 6-year-old kid, and this is the first real naked lady that I've ever seen in my life, and it changed my life. I was like, holy crap, this is weird. I'm feeling weird, you know? Leg warmers, face makeup, bright red hair, and this particular instance in my life really did change my life. The whole tone of that movie is so fun and silly, and it's not like any horror movie I had ever seen, because most of the time, the horror movies my dad would show me, it felt like those movies were like going for the gusto. Those movies were trying their best to scare you. But there's something about Return of the Living Dead, and even as a 6-year-old kid, watching it from a sliver at the top of the steps, in a mirror, in reverse, sneaking my viewing of this movie, I picked up on as a little kid, going, oh, okay, like, this is fun. Like, my father and his friends are not sitting there terrified. My father and his friends are sitting there laughing and having a good time and eating pizza and drinking beer and just enjoying this movie. And that's when I kind of started to realize that even horror movies can just be stupid fun. And you don't have to be terrified. You can just enjoy a movie. And that was a revelation, even for a little kid. But also, boobies. Lots and lots of boobies. And sweaty butt. And yeah, that scene changed my life. That's probably one of the most bizarre things in my life. Not overly gory, not disgusting, unless you're disgusted by a 6-year-old discovering boobies, but I'll never forget it. It's just a part of who I am now. So there's that.
More brains.
Well, one memory that I really remember really well when it comes to like watching a VHS tape at a friend's house was I remember there's a place called, I think it was called like Voice of Video is what it was called. It was a video rental store, and I remember I remember watching on TV. I think it was Return of the Living Dead Part 2, and I absolutely loved the movie. I watched it. It was edited on TV, and I remember talking to my dad about how much I really wanted to watch Return of the Living Dead Part 1, and he's like, "Oh no, you can't watch that one. It's a little too adult. I'm sorry." And like, of course, too, in the basement, my dad had all of his tapes down there, so there was like a wall of tapes. So I would see one of them that was on there all the time as Return of the Living Dead, the first film, and I always wanted to watch it. And he was like, "Oh, sorry, Sean, it's just a little too adult." But I watched the second one on TV, and I told him, I said, I watched the second one. Would it be okay to watch the first one? And he's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, Sean, it's just too adult." So being the kind of the bad kid that I was. I remember when I went to the one friend's house, we ended up going to the video, the Voice of Video place and rented movies, and I was like, oh, I could rent Return of the Living Dead. So me and we ended up renting it. And I remember I knew I was like not supposed to be watching this, and I think I was maybe in like the 4th grade or something like that. I remember I went and watched this thing, and right when it was the scene when Linnea Quigley was taking off her shirt, the guy's father came into the room, and he's like, oh, we cannot be watching this. We cannot watch this. And he's like put his hand on the remote, grabbed the remote. He like stood in front of the TV. He turned off the TV, and he's like, "Oh, you guys got to go to bed now. Time to go to bed. Oh, we can't be watching this." And then I remember like that was was like one of those memories when it comes to VHS and video rentals and renting something. I remember that so well with, you know, how bad, you know, that went, and how it was like, I just started this movie, I was loving the film, but then I ended up telling my dad about it. I said, you know, I ended up renting it, and I convinced him, and he's like, okay, Sean, you know, you can watch it, and then he let me watch it that night. So I finally was able to actually watch it with permission, but I remember that really well, the guy's father coming in the room right during the topless scene, the most awkward scene to come in, these fourth graders watch this movie, then he comes in and shuts the thing off and says, no, we're not going to be watching that. So that's when it comes to early VHS memories, like, and funny, outstanding, strange ones, that's definitely one of them for me.
Most bizarre VHS memory is actually the story of how I got into VHS culture, you know, as an adult. Was I had bought Killjoy on eBay, and then I posted on Instagram, and I just hashtagged like VHS, and then all of a sudden some guy commented underneath it and said, that's my tape. And I questioned it, and I was like, how the fuck would you know that? And he's like, dude, because I put those stickers in there, and those are the stickers that are on, you know, the floor. And he's like, and I was like, whoa, that's fucking crazy. And then he basically told me, he goes by VHS Marijuana Kid. It's actually, well, I'll show it to you later, but it's over there. But he then is the one who introduced me to like Lunch Meat and all these other people. So really, bizarre memory, it's more of just how serendipitous all that was. I was like really into VHS collecting and thought, man, I wish there was like a community out there that like did this. And then lo and behold, there is. So less bizarre, more just fucking rad.
Most bizarre VHS memories I can remember probably have to include with obtaining these VHS. I have, you know, I remember I've been in, there was a time I was in a yard sale, and this guy goes, hey, you like, I think I was holding Caligula, which is a weird movie. I never heard of it. Anybody out there who's never seen the movie, maybe check it out, maybe. It's a little something. Malcolm McDowell's in it from, you know, Clockwork Orange and such. And it's like a Roman Empire movie, and he plays like a king who's just beyond. And he was like, oh, you like weird shit? You like this? So I said, all right, cool. And then we were talking more, and he goes, come with me. And I hadn't watched Caligula yet. If I watched Caligula and then he said, come with me, after recommending it, then I might not have went with him. But he's like, come with me. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I follow him into his fucking basement. I go into this dude's house with him. And yeah, you know, he brought me into the basement. He pulled out this tub of VHS. And I remember he had Spookies in there, like with some wrapping. It was open, but the wrapping was still on a type deal. He had like what I believe to be the original release of Halloween. I believe, I could be wrong. I think it's the media release with the fold under that folds in on the bottom. I think Halloween 2 he had as well, like really old one. And I grabbed like maybe 3 or 4 other really cool ones there. And that was worthwhile, but I do not recommend going just randomly into people's basements.
My buddies and I, we worked at this restaurant, and we would always, after we would leave, across the street was a half-price book, so we would always go dumpster diving. I had a buddy that worked over there, and he said y'all could just go dumpster diving over there and find a lot of cool stuff. So we would always go dumpster diving at a half-price books, and I remember I found this tape. It didn't have a cover to it, and it was called like, what was it? It was like Ass Alir or something like that. It was really weird, and I figured, okay, this is a porno. So take it home, we throw it in. Sure enough, it is a porno, but it was the weirdest alien porn I had ever seen. Super old, very scratchy, and we would catch little bits of just. It would scratch out and fade in and out, and the music would go in and out, and then we saw this little part of this alien that had like dildos for hands. It was just crazy stuff. I can't find it. I've looked for it everywhere. Like, not the tape. I had the tape still, but I can't find the movie anywhere online. I've been trying to find it so I could show people, but the only way I could show them is if they come over and I pop it in the VCR. You know?
Most bizarre. So I would say okay. So me and an ex-girlfriend of mine were out hunting for tapes, and we would like go to like answer, like we would go on Craigslist and stuff like that, and we'd look at people selling tapes. So we saw an advert, I forget where it was, I think it was online, but this dude said, I have tons of VHS tapes, mostly adult. And we're like, oh, well, that might be cool to go check it out. So we did, and we got to the house, and it was like the most normal, unassuming, like regular ass people you could ever imagine. Their house was like very clean and like I don't know, they were just like a regular couple. They were probably in their late 30s, early 40s at the time. And they're like, yeah, so you're here to look at the VHS tapes? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, they're downstairs. And even the wife was like, would you guys like some tea? Or like some iced tea? And we're like, no, we're good, thank you. So it was very nice at first, and then we went downstairs, and this dude had, I shit you not, like, probably like 5,000 to 6,000 pornos on VHS just sitting in his basement. And we're going through them, and we're trying to look for the older ones, from the 80s, like the like Beetlejuice and all this other kind of, like the funny rip-off ones is the one we were looking for, because we like those. And I like those too. And we were looking for them. We were looking through them. We was just all like just generic 90s porn, right? And we were looking through them, and he was just standing on the side, just like biting his fingernails, and he looked so uncomfortable, dude. Like he just looked so uncomfortable that he had all these pornos just in his basement. And he was like, yeah, they're 10 cents each. And I was like, 10 cents, okay. And we looked at him, and we just couldn't take any of them because we weren't going to do anything with them. And he looked at him, and he was just like, he looked at us, and he was just like, so you can't take any of them? He just looked desperate to get these pornos out of his house. And it was somewhat funny and somewhat sad, but altogether very bizarre. Okay, so I mean, it was just a bizarre feeling. But that's the one that popped in mind, so that's the story that I told. It was a very unforgettable experience, and I'm pretty sure that dude still has 6,000 VHS pornos sitting in his basement. So, I don't know.
There was this place over near me, we'll say, that was it was like a bodega. For anybody out there that is familiar with bodega, it's kind of like a store that's supposed to be a store, but it's really just the front for a store. So you'll go in there and they'll have milk from 1972 in the fridge, but like they have all the best weed behind the counter and drugs to buy type deal. So I went into a place like that. It was funny because me and my buddy, one of my buddies that was big into horror, stumbled upon this weird place, and they sold scratch tickets. Like their sign was scratch tickets and VHS. So we rolled into this place. They should have just said scratch tickets. But the funniest part is they had a wall of VHS, and they had the most obscure movies you could think of on this wall that I would have bought all of them if I could have. That's how obscure they were. But it was just the cases, and I went out back I'd be like, hey, you got that movie? And they'd be like, they'd walk out back like just for enough time to pretend to look and then come back and be like, no, we don't have it. And they had none of these movies. And I think it was just the displays up there. And I think it was, it was just the front for lottery tickets or whatever, maybe even harsher shit. You could buy people there. I don't know what the story was, but that was a weird one. But yeah, that was like a bodega one. That always made me laugh.
For video reliability and performance, trust VCRs built by Hitachi. Look at Hitachi's warranty. A full 24 months on parts at no extra cost, double the competition. Hitachi precision engineers the Luminar video with the latest and extra durable space-age materials. Better engineered, best warranty. Hitachi, science for the senses.
Into Scarecrow Video we go.
And they have in here in the window like an old like laser disc for the last Boy Scout. They're real like sun drenched here, and then like bunch of like posters and stuff like that. But like I was saying though, inside of here they have all kind of like VHS tapes over here to rent and posters on the wall. But we're gonna head on inside and see. I don't know how much stuff is for sale in there, but we'll see if there's anything for sale. But yeah, this is one place I've always wanted to go into. Oh yeah, so right here is all used VHS for sale. I don't know how much all this stuff is all individually marked. Like all the King's horses here. Yeah, so like
all this stuff here is all the VHS for sale. I still have a VHS player, but the problem is, like, since I got the newer TV, the 4K TV, I haven't been able to figure out how to, like, set it up, because you have to have like a certain type of thing to get it to work. What is this one here? This John Ritter one, The Comeback Kid. I don't know if there's some obscure ones in here that you don't come across a lot. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually seen this movie. I don't even know if this one is on DVD or Blu-ray. Like I said, anytime it's like a real obscure stuff, it's cool to see, like especially horror ones in here. I always remember this too, the Lost World VHS here that had this like lenticular cover that changed between it. Yeah, this one's $3.99 here, so there are some more expensive ones like kind of mixed in here. I think these ones here are all for sale as well. And here's a bunch of kids ones here. Stranger in Time. Yeah, luckily enough, it doesn't seem like they're playing any music. It's just like they're playing like a movie. This one here, ABC Kid Time. This is like PJ Funny Bunny. That's kind of interesting. I remember this like ABC Kid Time thing. When was this from? Like 1991. So I remember when that thing was on. And this is the one, this movie, and I remember this cover so well. As a kid, the trailer for this movie creeped me out so much. And I don't know why. Like every time I saw that trailer as a kid, I think it was on the tape for like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or something like that. I remember it creeped me out so bad. I hated the trailer for that movie. I don't know what it was about it. It always really, really got to me. But it just seemed like it was for a horror movie or something, even though it wasn't. There's another weird one here, Miss Bear. What is this one from, like 97? Yeah, there definitely are some obscure tapes. This is the area too. Danny Sinerstalker would love all this stuff.
You know, Peanut Butter Solution, Friday the 13th in the bottom. And these are great too. I love this company right up here. City Lights Entertainment, great low budget company. One of my favorites. If I got this in a trade, hard movie to get, but good fun is Hollow Gate. Pretty rare one is that. Definitely love that one. Some stuff is not on DVD or Blu-ray. Like some stuff, say like this, for example. This movie right here, Nightlife, great movie. It's not on DVD or Blu-ray. And a lot of stuff is not. So that's one of the reasons why I like to still collect VHS. It just looks cool. You watch, you get the good grainy, somewhat grainy quality. It's not polished up, so I like that for what it is. I don't want it too polished up, so I like the VHS. It's just fun. And it's like the closest thing to going back in time is VHS, because you get those old trailers, or it's great too if you have a recorded TV taping of it. You get those great old school commercials, maybe toy commercials, foods and soda that's no longer around, but you gotta say you recorded it in the 80s and early 90s. You have it right there to look at, and you're like, oh my God, I remember getting that. And it's just those great vibes. Captures that moment in time too. So it's like the next closest thing to go into a time machine. And also, let me show you, I'll tell you a great story. Like last week, you can still find VHS now. Like I said, just look for VHS. And like last week, it proves me you can still find tapes, because I found a bunch of tapes, I'll show you right now, that I got in a dumpster for free. It's insane. This is a Cinestalker here for an impromptu video. As you can see, I am in, I'm helping man Renee out, and there's a ton of tapes in the trash, tapes. And look what I found. It would have been thrown away, bro. It would have been thrown away. Zombie. And thank God there was no rain, dude. Look at this, look at this. Oh my God. This is amazing. It's like a gold mine of freaking tapes.
Dude, it goes on and on.
Oh my God, Biker Mice from Mars. It's a great cheesy cartoon. Dude, Bride Reanimator, what? Like, look at this, look at this. Dude, do we get like some heavy metal action right here? Oh my God, this is tons. Tons of tapes. Look at this, it's like, dude. Monster Squad Beta Vestron? What the hell, dude? A Betamax Vestron? Dude, I've never even seen a beta of that before. That is gnarly. Like glass, too. I stepped on some glass. Oh my God. What is this? Helix? Cheesy glam bands. I'm down, dude. Ooh. Hold the night. Oh, Nico, okay. Let's do that. There's some good stuff here, man. Like, whoever had this, dude, there's some good stuff, bro. Bro, are you kidding me, bro? Bro, what the hell, dude? There's some good stuff. You just think this stuff is gonna be thrown in the trash. It's literally thrown in the trash, dude. I mean, it's like, there's so much good stuff here. Holy moly. There's literally a gold mine here of tapes, dude. Literally a gold mine. Dude, Night of the Zombies. I already got this, but you know what? I can use it for sale. You know what I mean? Dude, this is crazy, bro. I'm probably saying it so many times. This is crazy, but this is literally insane. I've never seen so much good stuff thrown out before. All these I found for free at a dumpster, literally a dumpster, in one of my recent YouTube videos. Look it up, best dumpster dive ever. And you can see me find these in the dumpster. I found Zombie on Wizard, probably one of the best companies, Wizard Video. Found that for free. Are you kidding me? I didn't even have these on VHS. I got these on Blu-ray and DVD. I found not one, not two. I found 3 zombies in a dumpster. What? Along with some beta, which I never had a beta player. A lot of people say, what's your format, beta or VHS? I always grew up with VHS, but I know beta had superior picture. But I mean, Phantasm beta in a dumpster. This thing, I don't know what this is, Beesbo. I don't know what that is. So it sucks I can't watch this because I don't have a beta player. Hopefully I'll find one sometime. And you guys know Wasp, Metal, some Maiden. And I got another beta right up here. I found all these Company of Wolves, looks pretty cool. All those I found, you know, you got some clamshells, like HBO Thorny MI. You know, I just love these covers. I have VHS, love the covers. Great, you know, some Metal. Cheesy Barbie workout, yep, I had to get that. You know, dude, Barbie workout video, what the hell, why? Because why not? Because it's crap, and it might as well have some good crap. You know, some Suspiria, just a bunch of good stuff. I found all these, like I said, in the dumpster. It was absolutely one of the most amazing things was finding all this stuff in a dumpster. Beta of Monster Squad. The glove, you know, so there's a lot of great stuff. So yeah, definitely keep your eyes open out there, and you might be able to find things like this in a dumpster, a thrift store, or an old video store, or on a Craigslist ad, or who knows, any kind of ad. Like, look out for stuff, because there's deals and there's stuff to be found out there. Look at me, I found this. Like, this is insane. There's just some thoughts and some stuff just talking about with the VHS and why I love it so much. It's a format I always will love. I love it more finding tapes than finding a Blu-ray or a DVD in 4K. I get more enjoyment if I found an awesome tape in the wild than anything like that. You know, it's something about the tapes. Always will love it. It's just part of my, you know, upbringing. Love the format, love the artwork, love the big box, slipcase, clamshells, and all, and like neat ones like this. This one doesn't work anymore, but these ones that you press the button, it makes a noise. This one doesn't work anymore, but I love the things like that back when it just captures that time. So fun. A lot of hidden movies out there are still only on the tape world, so that's why I love it. And yeah, this is something I always will love.
Probably my most bizarre VHS memory would be renting The Amazing Shocking Asia. When I was younger, whenever I would get in trouble, my mom would often ground me from R-rated movies. So to get around that, I would rent unrated movies because I guess she just didn't know better. So I often would rent movies like shockumentaries and really gory films like Blood Diner and Faces of Death. But one time I had rented Faces of Death 3 with The Amazing Shocking Asia. And I remember it came on like a yellow colored VHS. And something about that just seemed very forbidden and intense and kind of different and foreign to me. And the contents of the film are very hard to watch. I was pretty young, I want to say 14 maybe when I rented that. There was a scene in particular that I have never been able to erase from my memory where for context, it's essentially an Asian version of Traces of Death or Faces of Death. So it's like shocking scenes and death and stuff like that all over Asia from like the 80s and 90s. And so the most shocking scene to me was when a woman who was sitting with her father who was eating a bowl of cereal, she took his bowl and went over to the corner of a room and squatted and proceeded to have a bowel movement in it, and then took the bowl to her father and he ate it. And it was all done in one take, so it was very much real. At the time, it was probably the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen. Culturally, I don't understand it. It seems probably not accurate to the culture and done for exploitive purposes, but it was something that I definitely will never be able to forget. It has always been cemented in my mind as sort of like the forbidden side of cinema on VHS. and in a lot of weird ways has inspired me to collect these types of films just simply because of their extreme nature, because they're so shocking and interesting and stuff you just can't find anymore. I mean, I know today with digital technology, there's YouTube and Ogreish and all sorts of interesting websites out there where you can see a lot of this stuff, but something in particular about these tapes, you know, you just can't capture there with the artwork, being able to collect them, even just the smell of the VHS tape, the dust, as you can see, is floating around here, the particles of dust just from handling them. You don't get that streaming. That's something that comes with VHS, and it's something that's lost today.
One of my favourite films of all time is Frank Heinlotter's Basket Case. I love this film. I love the grittiness, the griminess about it. Basket Case is one of my favourite films of all time. The VHS itself, I think this is actually worn out now. Let's have a look, if we can open it. That is worn out because I've watched this so many times. I absolutely love Basket Case. Totally amazing. And this cover says it all. This sums up the film right there. Frank Heinlotter's Basket Case.
What's in the basket? My brother.
What's in the basket?
Open it, if you dare. Basket Case.
Most of my VHS are in storage, but there's no way I could resist from showing you some of them. I'll have to start off with the Elm Streets. Elm Street 2 is my favourite for some reason. Probably one of the early ones I rented by myself. In terms of artwork, you can see the original Nightmare on Elm Streets. The 3D version, which was great, with the little 3D glasses, very gimmicky. Fright Night 2, Mind Killer. Evil Dead 2 was the first film I got to see in the cinema by myself. Brain Dead, a Peter Jackson classic. Things like Karate Kid, which have obviously come back in due to Cobra Kai, were a classic back then. Monster Squad, Blood Diner, Stallone classics, Cobra. As you can see, there's a lot of horror, Slugs, The Mutant Kid, and who could forget Hellraiser? I mean, I wasn't old enough to watch this in the cinema at the time, but my first rental of this was awesome.
So we've got Bloody Moon here, one of my favourite VHS covers right here. Look on the back of that, you've got a woman with her head coming off there, or some garden shears, you've got a saw going in the front. This is a preset video nasty, so this is the kind of stuff you would find walking in the video store and you'd see this on the shelf. And you'd think, yeah, I'll pick that one.
You'll see this talked about a lot out there. Blood Frenzy in the big box. You know, this is good stuff right here. Flip it. It's got a little bit of beat to it. A little beat going down on it. But it survived the war. You know what I mean? You don't see artwork like that anymore. I love how, you know, it's a lot like you'd see pornography back in the day. And it had like the same fucking format of laying out a cover. You know what I mean?
Closer to the wall of VHS goodness. Double Deep. Let's look at some VHS over there. I got VHS all over my pad. And a lot of stuff I had since I was a kid too. But back in the day it was just fun going to video stores and, you know, going to the horror section or whatever. And you just kind of look and you say, look at this thing. This looks kind of neat. And you kind of don't even know what it is. You kind of just pick it out because of the cover. That was the fun part about it. You go into video shops back in the day and you just kind of pick out random things. They might go in there for something else, say Friday the 13th, but you might come out with something like this also, because it's like, oh, I've never heard of this before. Let me get this. That's what I love about video shops back when, because you would find so many cool hidden gems that you otherwise would not know about. Unlike today with the look it up, and I might send you some links and stuff, but it was just great back when going there and seeing this stuff in like a physical form like it is with me right here. That's why I kind of like this. I kind of got my living room sort of set up like a little video store, sort of in a way, but I got my horror posters, some old original standee type, not standee, but you know, VHS promotional stuff up there, rare big box up there, Blood Frenzy. Probably one of my favorite covers. It's kind of cover art. Man, it's hard to pick, like, say a top 5 or 10 or 5 or so, but this is definitely one of them, is Blood Frenzy. Rare one. Another one I love is probably this one, Terror on Tape. Beautiful cover art, great big box. Let's get a couple more. There's so many good ones. You know, you can't go wrong with some Frankenhooker. Beautiful cover art of that. You know, it's like the talk box is one that you push the button, it talks. It says, you want a date, but still a great one in the collection. Man, Video Dead. This is like, you know, the personification of VHS horror is this. You get the zombie come out of the TV set with all those great colors. They just pop out. Love that. Great cover art, fun. Cheeseball movie for sure is that one. Let's go on this side. But yeah, Video Violence. I'm wearing a Video Violence t-shirt. And this right here is fantastic cover art because it has that real picture, like a photo with effects on the cover, which is great. I love those ones. Like this one next to it too is like that also. It's like, instead of artwork, it's like a model on there. But this is one of those misleading VHSs because this one up here, the movie looks like it's gonna be so cool, it's gonna be crazy. When you watch it, it's just an old movie that they put out to make it look like something new. They did a lot of misleading VHS stuff back when. And then let's see what's down here. So many good ones, you know, there's so much good stuff. You know, Popcorn, I have a poster of that. Right up here, original poster of Popcorn. Great movie made, I think, in 1990, I believe. And then, yeah, just a bunch of good stuff.
Here you go. Here's another one for the kids out there. The famed Spookies VHS classic, Good Times. You know, just like the skill to do something like that and then pop it back in. That is cool, yo.
Another one of my favourite covers is Small Town Massacre. I bloody adore this cover. This is totally amazing in all its big box glory right there.
I think Graham Humphreys deserves an honourable mention in terms of VHS collectors. Now, at the time, I'd collect or I'd be attracted to certain types of cover art, and these are some of the films I bought. Not all of these are Graham Humphreys, but it's only years later that I discovered that there was one guy who somehow designed all the tape covers that I actually loved. I mean, I could see the similarity in the artwork. I just assumed that most were done like this. I know a lot of these aren't Graham Humphreys, but you can see that he plays a massive part in my collection.
Okay, well, I've got a lot of really favorite covers on VHS because, as you know, a lot of them are exclusive art that were only available on video. But I narrowed it down to probably my top 5, and they're right here. In no particular order. We have Witchboard 2. I love this cover because of the Ouija board grabbing the neck. This is definitely iconic in the video store. Almost every horror section had this movie. It was very enticing. I think I rented it several times on video simply because of the cover. It's a great film too. I really love the movie, but the cover definitely sells it.
I collect ninja films, I collect horror films. I love weird obscure films. I love collecting ninja films. As a kid in the 80s, early 90s, it was all about ninja films. It was all about nunchucks, throwing stars. It was all about the ninja. And Ninja Kiss of Death. The film is okay, it's an okay film. But you know, it's not one of the best ninja films, it's a good ninja film. But look at that cover. That has to be the best ninja cover of all time right there. That has got everything you want in a cover. It's got action, it's got nudity, it's just got ninjas. You know, what more do you want? Look at that.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is what I feel to be the best artwork ever released on it. The ultimate definitive cover to have if you were to have. If they could somehow put this on maybe the 4K or something, they'd have a smash hit on their hands.
And we're back, and I have gathered some of my 5 favorite VHS tapes. My favorite movies. So one of my favorite horror exploitation weirdo movies of all time, The Pit. This movie is so weird. It blew my mind when I watched it, and I continued to watch it over the years, and it doesn't get any less weird. You know, it gets more weird in retrospect. I have this copy. I have this copy. I have this copy. I have 2 of these actually. This is a really cool jet line from Marquee, Canadian release, kind of rare, old. But yeah, The Pit rules. Please watch it if you haven't seen it. It is so weird and so cool, and I hope you like it.
Entertainment, Abel Ferreira's Driller Killer. You know, great film. You must watch this at maximum volumes and maximum VHS.
Exterminator 2 is my favourite cover art of all time on VHS. Look at that. Wow. That is stunning. That is totally amazing cover art. It's actually a pretty cool film as well. The Exterminator 2 is actually a really cool film.
3 on a Meat Hook is another one. This is a pretty obscure title that's frequently in the collector's market online. This was one I picked up for $10 at a video store that was going out of business in Missouri back in, I want to say, 98 or 99. It was a really good find then, because even then it wasn't a very common title that you could find in video stores. It's one I cherish because it also has never been released on DVD as of now. So the only way to see it is on VHS in this murky LP 4-hour mode tape.
Another favorite, The Gate. I mean, ironically enough, a gateway horror film for me. This was the gate into a lot of horror movies for me. You know, I was watching it about the same time as Troll 2, Monster Squad. You know, Garbage Pail Kids felt like a horror movie to me when I was a kid, but I mean, I was watching all these on tape and on cable and stuff like that. So, but I love this tape. You know, I thought this was the one I had when I was a kid, but I think I've traded it a couple times. I don't know. But this is just one of my favorite movies ever, and I think a lot of people love this movie, and just influential and really cool. The Gate on VHS, just a classic. So
my favorite 5 VHS tapes, definitely number 1 is going to be the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Fight me on it. Tell me it's not a good movie, and I will fight you. Dude, Dennis Hopper, dude, John Leguizamo, you got Bob Hoskins. It's like the most New York thing ever. Like, New York should actually just have this playing in Times Square like 24/7.
This cover art for Big Trouble in Little China is amazing. It's proper art. You don't see this kind of proper cover art anymore. Hand-drawn art, that is totally amazing, and an amazing film as well.
This was the Halloween that I got out of the dude's basement where I followed him, and then I got the bottom on it still, you know, encapsulated in, encased in greatness. I'm a big fan of that. Glad I have that. Nice media version, you know what I mean?
Faces of Death 5 is another cover I really like, and it's for a different reason. These movies always had kind of creepy, interesting covers that were very enticing, especially to kids, you know, back in the 90s. But what I really like about Faces of Death 5, as well as Faces of Death 6, is the almost bootleg look to the cover. I'm still not really clear if Faces of Death 5 and 6 are in fact legit releases from Gorgon, but what I do find interesting about the covers is that they're sort of a hodgepodge collage of covers from the other ones. Like, this is actually from part 4, and this is the skull from part 1. They're just really darkened and sort of blended together. And it's also got the same band in 46 countries that's on the tape of part 1. So I find this tape really, really interesting. And Faces of Death 5 and 6 were never released on DVD or any other format. You know, there's been a DVD box set of the first 4 and the documentaries and stuff, but these ones are very obscure. And I've never really gotten an answer if they're legit releases. You know, they've got labels, they look legit, they were sold and rented in video stores, so I mean, you've got to assume so, but if so, they definitely look very bootleg, which is, I think, a big part of the charm of these movies, and this one in particular.
And speaking of stuff when I was watching as a kid, Return of the Living Dead. Stone cold classic, changed everything for comedy horror. I love this tape. I love this movie. I think this was one of the first movies, if I could pick 3 movies that really scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, it would be It, Leprechaun, and Return of the Living Dead. I mean, seriously, dude. I mean, like, every time I would go outside at night, I was afraid that Tarman was going to come find me and just, like, rip my head off and eat it, you know? So, I mean, you know, it made me appreciate horror. It made me learn how to laugh at horror. It was just such a perfect movie for me at the time, watching it. And I would rent it a lot, and watch it on cable a lot. So, yeah, I love this tape. I also have The Clam somewhere, but this is the one that was close to me, so I grabbed it. Yeah.
When you're talking about VHS, you have to talk about Return of the Living Dead. This film is one of the best horror films ever made. It's comedy, it's horror, it's gore, it's zombies, it's blood, it's everything you want a gore horror film to be. It's totally amazing.
Jack Frost, The Killer Snowman, is another, fight me on it. It's the best film ever made. Maybe next to Reflections of Evil, we'll find out. But yeah, also my favorite cover art, because that holographic, I remember seeing this as a kid and being like, fuck! And then now I finally got it. I got it. So, boom!
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is the original video from Wizard Video, complete with the flaps and everything. I picked this up used at a Blockbuster Video back in the 90s. I saw it and had to have it, and I talked the clerk into selling it to me really cheap. This was the first movie I bought on VHS, not this particular version, I have that as well, but this one is my favorite cover. It's got, you know, this original artwork. It's very intense looking. It's got the quotes, you know, it's very grindhouse. It's dark. I like just that it's black with the text and that it's got all the flaps. You know, it makes it really unique. Only a handful of companies were doing this back then, and so it's something very particular about this release. And it's an amazing film, probably my all-time favorite movie next to Halloween 3. So this cover is definitely in my top 5.
And another one. Mother's Day. Wow. This movie was amazing when I first saw it. You know, this is a copy that I got at a dollar store when I was about like 17 or 16. And I remember walking into this dollar store and there was just like a 6-foot by 6-foot rack, and it was all filled with copies of Mother's Day, like 200 copies of Mother's Day. And I should have bought them all, right? Looking back, but I just bought the one for me. You know, and this is this is the exact tape that I bought. It barely works anymore because it is an EP mode. Says SP, but it is not. So it's broken down over the years. I still watch it. It has some really cool VHS aesthetics running through it now from the breakage and all that kind of stuff. But or the breaking down of it, yeah. But Mother's Day, fantastic film for me at the time. I still love it. Still watch it. It has some problems now, but I mean, who doesn't? So I think, you know, that's another big one for me.
Bride of the Living Dummy, my first VHS tape I bought. I think that when this finally dies, I'm gonna have a proper burial, like a little party, because I know one day it will. I've come to terms with it.
This is cool. This is one of my favorite tapes growing up. You know, this is now available on DVD, Blu-ray, but this is one of my favorite covers. I remember renting this so many times. I'm a huge Mario fanboy. The Wizard, Fred Savage, the Wizard, and we got Rilo Kiley over here. You know, I'm sure you guys know who that is. And then, little known fact. Dante Bosco was supposed to be in this film, but his scene got cut. So Rufio was supposed to be in The Wizard. Really cool. California. Basically a huge advertisement for Nintendo. But yeah, that's, I don't know, one of my favorite films, one of my favorite VHS covers. Happy to own this guy. Yeah, and this is probably one of those tapes that I will always pick up every time I see it, just because of the cover alone.
7 Doors of Death, the big box release from Thriller Video. I love this VHS because it's, again, got the flaps. It's large, which was done back in the day. Certain video companies would do this to take up more shelf space, so it would catch your eye a lot more than just a regular size video was. So these are really, really rare. And Thriller Video at the time was doing a lot of movies that was hosted by Elvira, but she actually refused to host certain movies, and this was one of them, because this movie is actually The Beyond by Lucio Fulci, but this is the really rare American cut. It's shorter. Some gore's been trimmed, but a lot of it's just for the pacing. It's got a completely different score, and honestly, I think this is the best version of the movie. I cherish this so much because it's never had another release on any other format, and I know that this big box VHS in particular does go for a pretty penny.
I love horror movies. I love exploitation movies. I love sci-fi movies. I love them all. But I'm also a big baseball movie fan. And sports ball. Like a lot of sports movies, right? And I mentioned Little Giants earlier, but this early release Paramount Video long box. As you can see, it's a little longer, kind of like a big box but skinnier. And this is a very early release of it. It has an error in the beginning, which I think is really cool. But Bad News Bears, hell, I love this movie. I mean, it is one of the stone cold classic movies of the 70s, and I just love this release because it's obviously very early and cool. And I don't know if you can tell, but like it has some dye problems here, and it's just a really cool tape. And I love this movie, and it just I remember hanging out at a friend's house, and they had this exact copy of it, and we would watch it all the time. So I had to track this down, and now I have it. So it reminds me of being a kid and watching this movie over and over again in the basement, and it's just a fun time. It's just awesome.
Big fan of being a jackass because I'm a jackass myself, and it's, you know, pre-jackass. And I just feel like you can tell that Bam Margera just paid some dub guy to make these. Like, this just seems so DIY, and love it.
The only bootleg things I really remember getting is wrestling. I would get bootleg wrestling. There was a time in my younger days when I didn't have cable. Well, I don't have cable now either, but it's more of a choice. But there was younger days when I didn't have cable, so I'd have friends would videotape me, you know, the Monday Night Raws for wrestling and stuff like that. So I'd get that from them. That was kind of the most bootlegging of VHS that I would get, is I would have that, you know. And I used to make bootleg VHS of, you know, different music videos off MTV and skits. You know, I have things with like, you know, I have a video of like all ICP's like TV appearances they did on Stern and different shows and stuff that I had. I put together mixtapes of like, you know, celebrity deathmatch matches mixed with music videos.
As far as bootleg memories, I never watched a snuff film by accident, and I never got, you know, Cannibal Holocaust and it was a, you know, Teletubbies or something. But the coolest bootleg, or just, you know, rad bootleg memory is it was a Comedy Central South Park marathon for like 3 days straight, and my friend's dad had a VCR recorder, and mine, I just didn't know how to work. And so I like basically bribed his dad to just like, please, not bribed, I just begged him. I was like, please film this, or please record this. So he recorded like 3 tapes of South Park, and it had all the commercials, and I still have one of them. And so you see these like old commercials for like Enzyte, like male enhancement, and you're just like, what the fuck was this time period?
So one of my favorite movies growing up, and still to this day, is this movie called Little Giants, which is about a Pee-wee football team that is like underdog, and then they, you know, come through, and it's really glorious. But I had a copy of the tape, and I would watch it all the time. You know, it was like a comfort food kind of movie. I would just like pick it up and pop it in the VCR, and, you know, have it on during the day when I'm running around the house playing with action figures, you know, reading comic books, stuff like that. The movie was always on. And as I got older, you know, I kept that copy. But I looked back at it maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I looked at it pretty closely, you know, because I was just kind of admiring it and thinking about it. And then I realized that it's bootleg. Like, it is not a real issue of Little Giants. It looks kind of real, but it's one of those like New York bootlegs, or one of those really well-made bootlegs you get at the flea market, where it's like it's not a photocopy cover, but it's like a bootleg, you know, bootleg cover, and then the tape has like a bootleg ass sticker on it. And I watched it, and it does look like a dub. So my whole life I've been watching a bootleg dub of Little Giants. Not that I cared, but you know, it didn't make a difference. It was the same movie. But it was just funny that, you know, you look back and like this tape you grew up with was a bootleg. So I think it's funny and cool. So yeah, that's my bootleg story.
I think I collect VHS simply for nostalgia. I've been doing it my whole life. You know, like when I was really young, the first VHS tape I ever bought with my allowance was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I never stopped buying them since then. You know, I've amassed quite a collection over the years. Sadly, in 2017, a lot of the collection went to my video store, Old School Video. It was sort of me giving to the community my massive collection I had accumulated over the years. But I still definitely have several dozen of my favorites here, my personal favorites. ones I just simply couldn't let go of, you know, because they are a big part of my life. I grew up watching these tapes, and they're why I became a filmmaker. You know, I love the horror genre. I love that a lot of these titles can only be found on video. And I think that, you know, something's been lost, you know, in the transition with technology. The collectability of films is kind of going away. And a lot of titles, too, that are just disappearing between the cracks that, you know, really only have their audience on video. And with the slew of independent films that are coming out now and the VOD and everything else, a lot of stuff is lost, and it's really only best preserved on VHS.
Well, I collect VHS because it's fun. VHS is happiness. I love the exploration, the discovery. There's always something new to find on VHS. There's always this thing you've never seen, or this thing you've forgotten about, or this thing that really just, like, you know, hits this geyser of nostalgia for you. And it's also film history. You know, it's stuff that never made it to DVD, which Lunch Meat talks about, obviously, and it's just attached to memories. And there are so many reasons why I collect VHS tapes, but primarily, I guess it's because it's fun, because it makes me happy, because it brings me to other people inside of a culture that enjoy the same thing. And we talk about films, we talk about cover art, we talk about releasing labels, we talk about all of these various things, and it becomes this larger conversation that's ever expanding. And there's so much culture and so much fun, and I don't know, I mean, I keep saying these words, but I think it's really just, it just makes me happy. I mean, it's like, why do you like cheeseburgers? I mean, like, why do you like dancing? Why do you like these things? You know, because they make you happy, because it's fun, because it fulfills you, because it fills your time with something that you like to do, and it informs you, and it enlightens you, and it fulfills you. You know, it's a great feeling. You know, and you know, this is a question that I could answer for hours, but I mean, for the sake of brevity, I collect VHS because it makes me happy, and because it's fun, and because you just find so much cool stuff out there, and it's just like never ending. And being able to connect with people about it is really special.
For me, it 100% is all about nostalgia. There's something about that tangible, physical copy in your hand. It's got some weight to it. It's got some life to it. And when you put it in your VCR, it remembers right where you were 20 years ago. Each viewing kind of has its own unique story. The more you watch the tape, the more it degrades. You know, if you're dubbing it, it's a second generation dub, it's a little hazier, third generation, etc., etc. For me, it's the best format because of all of those memories tied to it. I mean, you can't get much better than that. I think every generation kind of has their own thing, you know, whether it's vinyl records, whether it's 8-track tapes, or whether you're a super old crazy bastard, you had a phonograph or whatever the fuck those things were called. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, every generation has their own thing. And since I was born in the 80s, I was brought up on VHS, and I was really hesitant to adopt the idea of movies on disc. And, you know, it just sort of happened. And for a long time, I kind of forgot about what makes VHS so special. And it wasn't until recently, when we decided to build our own video store, that I started getting back into collecting all of these movies that I had when I was a kid. And I think that's what makes it special, is it's tied to the inner child. So there's nothing wrong with pulling a Blu-ray of TerrorVision off of your shelf and being like, man, look at how crisp and how clean that is. But there's something so magical about pulling a big old thick, big box, cardboard VHS, not even a clamshell, those big box. Pull it off the shelf and slide out the plastic tape protector and take that tape out, and it just, you know, there's something special about that. And it gets lost in translation from generation to generation, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm doing my best to keep VHS alive in 3B video.
Big boxes that you would rent from the video store like this have got such a special place in my heart, because these are the ones you never got the covers to take home. You know, you'd go in there, you'd sort of take this blank cover up to the desk in there. They'd hand it to you in a, the VHS inside, but in a blank box.
Don't forget to bring them back, otherwise you get a 50p charge. 50p for the first night, £1 after that sort of thing.
Horror and Sea, which is a horror film festival held every January on the coast in Southend. And what's happened there, we've created our own video club where filmmakers who are really passionate about VHS and horror submit and create their own VHS or faux VHS covers and tapes, which are there as part of our video club. Horror filmmakers are massive VHS fans generally, and you can see the effort they put in to creating their own VHS style covers and artworks. These are all modern films where the filmmakers, producers, directors have bothered, have put the effort in to create a VHS cover, including case, and in some cases actual tape with the film featuring on there for general display and use. This is one of the reasons why I think VHS will never die, because of the fans who include filmmakers.